Marcus Kane's hands shook as he signed away his future. The pen felt like a weapon, the contract like a death sentence, or maybe a lifeline. Across the mahogany table, lawyers watched him with predatory patience. They'd found his weakness, Dylan, his 8-year-old son, dying by inches in a hospital bed 3 miles away. The deal was simple. Marry Victoria Hartwell. Care for the silent heiress locked in her wheelchair and her trauma. Ask no questions. Walk away in 6 months with enough money to save his child. What they didn't tell him was that some silences hide secrets that could destroy everything. And that sometimes the most broken people recognize each other in ways the world never sees coming. Drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The attorney's office smelled like old money and older lies. Marcus Kane sat rigid in a leather chair that cost more than his monthly rent. Calloused fingers gripping the armrests like they might anchor him to sanity. His reflection in the polished conference table looked like a stranger, a 45-year-old man with gray creeping through his dark hair and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Mr. Kane, if you'll just review the terms one final time. Bernard Whitmore, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates, slid the contract across the table with the smooth efficiency of a man who'd orchestrated dozens of these arrangements. Rich families hiding inconvenient truths. Marcus wondered how many other desperate men had sat in this chair signing away pieces of themselves. Marcus didn't touch the document. He'd read it 3 times already, each word burning itself into his memory. 6 months, he said, his voice rough from too many sleepless nights. I live in the Hartwell estate. Provide care for Victoria Hartwell. Meals, medication, physical therapy assistance. No press, no questions about the family or the accident. Correct. And at the end I get $500,000, enough for Dylan's surgery and the recovery afterward. Whitmore's expression didn't change. Paid in full upon satisfactory completion of the contract term. Miss Hartwell's family is prepared to cover all of your son's medical expenses immediately upon signing. The surgery can be scheduled for the end of the 6-month period. Marcus closed his eyes. Dylan's face appeared behind his eyelids, pale skin oxygen tubes, those big brown eyes that still somehow held hope despite everything. His son trusted him. Believed Dad could fix anything the way he always had, the way Sarah used to say he would until her last breath. Why me? The question broke free before Marcus could stop it. You could hire a professional caregiver, a nurse with credentials. Why a widowed welder with a sick kid and enough debt to drown in? Whitmore adjusted his glasses. Miss Hartwell's family believes she needs someone authentic. Someone who understands suffering without the clinical detachment of medical professionals. Your background check showed exactly the kind of character they're looking for. A devoted father. A man of integrity despite difficult circumstances. Translation: desperate enough to agree, decent enough not to exploit the situation, and broken enough to understand their broken daughter without asking uncomfortable questions. I wanted in writing that Dylan's care starts immediately. Not when I move in. Not in a week. Today. Already arranged. Whitmore produced another document. Your son will be transferred to Mercy Hospital's cardiac unit this afternoon. Dr. Harrison Chen, the best pediatric cardiac surgeon on the West Coast, will oversee his care until surgery. Marcus's throat tightened. Dr. Chen. He'd researched the man obsessively. Countless successful surgeries, innovations in pediatric heart repair, a waiting list 18 months long. The kind of doctor Marcus could never afford in 1,000 lifetimes of welding. Can I see her first before I sign? Whitmore hesitated. That's unusual. I'm not signing a contract to care for someone I haven't met. What if we can't stand each other? Mr. Kane, the nature of this arrangement is that I'm agreeing to spend 6 months of my life with a stranger. I see her first, or I walk. The lie tasted bitter. They both knew Marcus wouldn't walk. Couldn't walk. Not with Dylan's labored breathing echoing in his memory, the way his son's small hand clutched at his shirt during the coughing fits that left them both terrified. Whitmore made a phone call. 10 minutes of hushed conversation later, he nodded. Mrs. Patricia Morgan, the estate manager, will meet you at the Hartwell residence in 1 hour. You'll have 15 minutes. The Hartwell estate rose against the autumn sky like something from another world. Marcus's battered pickup truck, a 2008 Ford, with rust eating through the wheel wells and an engine that knocked ominously on cold mornings, looked like an intruder on the circular driveway of pristine white stone. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying to steady his breathing. The house was all colonial architecture and intimidation. White columns, black shutters, windows that reflected the gray October sky like judgmental eyes. The ground stretched in every direction, hedges trimmed with geometric precision, fountains, silent in the fall chill. Marcus had grown up in a 3-bedroom ranch with aluminum siding and a yard more weeds than grass. He'd raised Dylan in a 2-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner, where the walls were so thin they could hear Mrs. Chen's television through the floor, and the heat only worked half the winter. This place was a different universe. A woman emerged from the front entrance, 50-ish, wearing a gray suit that probably cost what Marcus made in a month. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her expression was professionally neutral. "Mr. Kane, I'm Patricia Morgan." She offered a hand, her grip firm and assessing. Mr. Whitmore called ahead. "You understand this visit is highly irregular." "I understand. I'm about to sign a contract that changes my life. Figured I should know what I'm getting into." Something flickered in Patricia's eyes. Respect, maybe, or just acknowledgement that he wasn't completely naive. "Miss Hartwell is in the conservatory. She spends most of her time there." Patricia led him through the entrance into a foyer that could have swallowed Marcus's entire apartment. Marble floors, a chandelier that belonged in a palace, a staircase that curved upward like something from a movie. "I should tell you she doesn't communicate much. Since the accident she's been withdrawn." The file said she doesn't speak. "No, she doesn't." They walked through corridors that felt more like museum galleries, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, furniture that looked like it shouldn't be touched, everything pristine and cold. Marcus's work boots echoed on the marble, each step a reminder that he didn't belong here. "What happened to her?" he asked. Patricia's shoulders tensed. "That's not my story to tell. The family prefers—" "I'm not asking the family, I'm asking you." She stopped walking, turned to face him. For a long moment she studied him with an intensity that felt like she was weighing his soul. "Car accident, 18 months ago. Victoria was the passenger. She survived with a spinal injury that left her paralyzed from the waist down. Neurological damage, the doctors said, though the spine itself wasn't severed. Psychosomatic. Some specialists believe her mind protecting her from something too traumatic to process. And she just stopped talking. Not at first. For the first 2 weeks she screamed, cried, fought everyone who tried to help. Then one day she went silent. Hasn't spoken since. Won't write except the bare minimum on her phone's text-to-speech app. The family tried therapy, psychiatric care, experimental treatments. Nothing worked." Patricia resumed walking, her heels clicking sharp and final on the marble. "They're hoping you might reach her somehow. Help her find a reason to engage with life again. And if I can't, then you'll provide basic care, ensure she's comfortable, and collect your payment. The family's expectations are realistic." They reached a set of glass doors, afternoon light streaming through. Patricia paused with her hand on the handle. "Mr. Kane, a word of advice. Don't try to fix her. Don't push. Victoria has been surrounded by people trying to make her better, make her normal, make her the daughter they remember. It hasn't helped. Maybe what she needs is someone who just sees her as she is." Then she opened the doors and walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his decision. The conservatory was a greenhouse jungle, tropical plants, creating a wall of green against the dying autumn outside, orchids blooming in impossible colors, ferns cascading from hanging baskets. The air was humid, heavy with the scent of soil and living things. And in the center, framed by all that desperate green life, sat Victoria Hartwell. The photos in Whitmore's file had shown a vibrant woman in her mid-30s, dark hair, styled perfectly confident smile, wearing designer gowns at charity galas. The woman before him was a ghost of those images. Her hair hung limp and uncared for. Her face was too pale and too thin, and she sat motionless in her wheelchair, staring at a flowering orchid with eyes that seemed to look through it rather than at it. Marcus stood in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. In the welding shop, he always knew what to do: measure twice, cut once, test the joints until they held under pressure. This was different. This was a human being shattered in ways he couldn't measure or fix. He cleared his throat. She didn't react. "Miss Hartwell, I'm Marcus Kane." Nothing. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. Marcus moved closer, careful to keep his movements slow and non-threatening. "The lawyers sent me. I guess you know about the arrangement they're proposing. I wanted to meet you before I agreed to anything." Her fingers moved slightly on the wheelchair's armrest. That was all. "I know this isn't what you wanted," he continued, feeling like he was talking to himself. "Hell, it's not what I wanted either. But my son is sick, dying if we're being honest, and I'd do anything to save him, including this." Victoria's gaze shifted just barely toward him. Not quite making eye contact, but closer. "The deal is, I move and help you with daily care, and in 6 months I have enough money for Dylan's surgery. You get, I don't know what you get out of this. Another stranger in your house, I guess. Someone else trying to fix you when you probably just want to be left alone." Marcus crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. Close enough to see that her eyes weren't just brown, they were hazel with flecks of green, and behind the emptiness, there was something else. Pain so deep, it had become its own kind of silence. "I can't promise I'll make anything better," he said quietly. "I'm not a therapist or a miracle worker. I'm just a guy who knows what it's like when your body betrays you and everyone around you has opinions about how you should handle it. My wife died 3 years ago. Aneurysm. One minute she was laughing at something Dylan said, the next she was gone. And everyone had advice. Move on, stay strong. Don't cry in front of your son. Get therapy. Date again." He paused, surprised at his own honesty. "But nobody asked what I needed. They just told me what I should do. So I'm not going to do that to you. If I sign that contract and move in here, I'll follow your lead. You want silence, we'll have silence. You want help, I'll help. You want me to leave you the hell alone, except for the basics, I can do that too." Victoria's eyes focused on him fully for the first time, really looked at him. And Marcus felt something pass between them. Recognition, maybe. One broken person seeing another. She reached for her phone with movements that seemed to take enormous effort. Her fingers moved across the screen, slowly, deliberately. The robotic voice that emerged was flat, emotionless, but the words were hers. "Why would you care what I want? Because you're a person, not a problem to solve." She stared at him for a long moment, then typed again. "Your son. What's wrong with his heart? Congenital defect. He was born with it, but it wasn't severe enough to require surgery until last year. Now the valve's failing. Without the surgery, he's got maybe 6 months. With it, he could live a normal life. You love him." It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. "More than anything in this world." Victoria's hands trembled as she typed. "Then sign the contract. Save your son. I don't need saving." Marcus stood up slowly. "Everyone needs something, Miss Hartwell. Maybe we'll figure out what that is. Or maybe we'll just survive 6 months together. Either way, Dylan gets his chance." He turned to leave, but her voice, the text-to-speech voice, stopped him. "Call me Victoria. Miss Hartwell was the person I used to be." Marcus looked back. She'd turned her wheelchair to face him, and for just a second, he thought he saw the ghost of who she'd been before the accident, before the silence. "Marcus," he said. "Nobody calls me Mr. Kane except lawyers and people trying to sell me something." The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but not quite nothing either. Marcus signed the contract 2 hours later in Whitmore's office, his signature bolder than before. By the time he reached Mercy Hospital's pediatric ward, Dylan had already been transferred to a private room that looked more like a hotel suite than a hospital. His son was awake, looking small and overwhelmed in the massive bed. But his eyes lit up when Marcus walked in. "Dad, they said I get surgery. Dr. Chen came by, and he showed me pictures of hearts and explained everything, and—" A coughing fit cut off Dylan's excitement, but even that didn't dim his smile. "And he said after I'm better, we can go camping. Real camping, not in the backyard." Marcus gathered his son into a careful hug, breathing in the little boy smell of him, shampoo and something, sweet life and hope and everything Marcus couldn't bear to lose. "Yeah, buddy, real camping. Mountains, fishing, the whole thing." "How'd you do it, Dad? How'd you get the money?" Marcus pulled back, looking into Dylan's trusting eyes. His son still believed in heroes and fathers who could fix anything and happy endings. Marcus would do whatever it took to make sure Dylan kept believing. "I got a new job. A live-in position, taking care of someone who needs help. Like when you took care of Mom when she was sick that one time?" The memory stabbed Sarah with the flu. Weak and miserable Marcus bringing her soup and bad jokes until she laughed despite feeling terrible. 3 months before the aneurysm. 3 months before everything ended. "Yeah, buddy. Like that. Is the person nice?" Marcus thought about Victoria in her conservatory prison surrounded by green life while she faded to gray. About the pain in her eyes and the silence that protected her from whatever truth she couldn't speak. "I think she's trying to be. Just like us." Dylan nodded, satisfied with that answer, in the way only children could be satisfied with half-truths that protected them. "When do you start?" "Tomorrow, but I'll visit every day. Promise." "Can I meet her?" The question surprised Marcus. "Why would you want to?" Dylan shrugged, playing with the hospital blanket. "Because you're going to be taking care of her. That means she's important. I want to meet important people." Marcus's throat closed. His son, 8 years old and facing open-heart surgery, worried about meeting the woman Marcus had essentially married on paper to save his life. "Maybe. When you're feeling better, we'll see." That night, Marcus packed their small apartment into boxes, not much to show for 37 years of life. Most of Dylan's clothes, his toys, the photo albums Sarah had made before she died. Marcus's own possessions fit into 2 duffel bags. Work clothes, his welding gear, photos of Sarah, and the letters she'd written to Dylan for every birthday until he turned 18. Sealed envelopes with years written on them in her careful handwriting. He found himself staring at their wedding photo, Marcus at 23, in an ill-fitting suit, Sarah in a simple white dress from a consignment shop. Both of them grinning like they'd won the lottery. They'd had nothing but each other, and somehow that had been everything. Now he was marrying another woman sort of for money. Sarah would have understood. She'd always said Marcus would do anything for family. He just never imagined family would shrink to one small boy whose heart was giving out. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Morgan. "Move-in is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. East wing bedroom and adjoining room prepared for you and Dylan. Medical equipment arrived. Dr. Chen approved Dylan's visits once you're settled. Welcome to the Hartwell estate." Marcus stared at the message. This was really happening. In 12 hours, he'd be living in a mansion caring for a silent stranger, pretending this was normal. He texted back, "I'll be there." Then he sat on his worn couch in his empty apartment and let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. Fear that this would all fall apart. Guilt that he was essentially using Victoria's tragedy for Dylan's salvation, grief for Sarah, who should have been here to help him figure this out, and desperate, crushing hope that maybe somehow this impossible plan would actually work. At 3 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. His heart lurched. Hospitals only called in the middle of the night for bad news. "Mr. Kane, this is Patricia Morgan. I apologize for the late hour." What's wrong? Is it Victoria? No, she's fine. But I'm calling because I need you to understand something before you arrive tomorrow. Marcus sat up suddenly, wide awake. I'm listening. Patricia's voice was quiet, like she was afraid of being overheard. The Hartwell family isn't doing this out of kindness. They're doing it because Victoria is a problem they can't solve. A daughter who won't perform properly, won't recover on their timeline, won't pretend everything is fine. They hired you hoping you'll either fix her or manage her quietly until they can figure out what to do next. Why are you telling me this? Because Victoria deserves better than to be managed. And because I see how her father looks at her now like she's already gone. Like the accident took his real daughter and left behind this inconvenient ghost. Marcus's jaw clenched. You think I should back out? No. I think you should know what you're walking into. The Hartwells are powerful, wealthy, and very good at making problems disappear. Victoria is their daughter, but she's also evidence of something they want to keep buried. Be careful, Mr. Kane, and protect that girl however you can. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment, Patricia's warning echoing. Evidence. What kind of evidence? And what were the Hartwells hiding that was worth more than their daughter's recovery? He thought about the file Whitmore had given him, clinical details about Victoria's injuries, her care requirements, her medical history. But nothing about the accident itself. Nothing about how a healthy 37-year-old woman ended up paralyzed and silent. Nothing about what truth she was protecting with that silence. Marcus didn't sleep the rest of the night. He watched the sky lighten from black to gray to the pale blue of early morning, thinking about contracts and silences, and all the ways people hurt each other while calling it family. At 9:45 a.m., he loaded the last boxes into his truck, took one final look at the apartment where he'd tried to build a life after Sarah died, where Dylan had taken his first steps alone after his mother's death, where they'd survived the worst and somehow kept going. Then, Marcus Kane drove toward the Hartwell estate, toward a silent woman in a wheelchair, toward 6 months of pretending this was just a job, and not something that felt increasingly like jumping off a cliff, with no idea if anyone would catch him. The gates opened automatically as he approached. The house waited pristine and cold. Marcus took a breath, thought of Dylan's trusting eyes, and drove through. Patricia stood waiting at the front entrance when Marcus pulled up, her expression unreadable. She helped him carry boxes to the east wing, her heels clicking a rhythm that somehow felt like a countdown. The bedroom she showed him was larger than his entire apartment had been, king bed with a carved headboard, antique dresser, windows overlooking gardens that stretched toward a distant tree line. The adjoining room had been converted into a medical suite for Dylan, complete with a hospital bed, monitoring equipment, and enough space for a recovery area. Victoria's room is down the hall, Patricia said, setting down the last box. Third door on the left. She's expecting you at 11 for her morning medication and physical therapy session. I've left a schedule and care instructions on the kitchen counter. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of it settling over him. This was real now. No backing out. Mr. Kane? Patricia paused at the door. What I said last night about being careful, I meant it. But I also want you to know that Victoria is stronger than anyone gives her credit for, including herself. You care about her. I've worked for this family for 12 years. I've watched Victoria grow from a passionate graduate student into a woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. And I've watched them slowly extinguish that light because it's easier to have a quiet, manageable daughter than a vibrant, complicated one. Patricia's voice hardened. Don't let them do that to her. Don't let them convince you she's broken beyond repair. After Patricia left, Marcus unpacked in silence. His clothes looked out of place in the antique dresser, his worn work boots absurd on the polished hardwood floor. He found himself touching things carefully, afraid his calloused hands might damage something valuable. At 10:50, he knocked on Victoria's door. Come in. The mechanical voice came from inside, flat and emotionless. Victoria sat by the window in her wheelchair, wearing gray sweatpants and an oversized sweater that swallowed her thin frame. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she looked like she hadn't slept. "Morning," Marcus said. "I'm here for your 11 o'clock meds and therapy." She didn't turn around. "You can leave them on the table?" "Patricia's instructions say I need to make sure you take them and eat something." "Patricia worries too much." "Yeah, well, I signed a contract that says I worry now too." Marcus moved to the table, finding the pill organizer Patricia had prepared. "When did you eat last?" Silence. Marcus waited, counting the seconds. At 30, he tried again. "Victoria, I'm not trying to be difficult, but if you collapse from not eating, I'm the one who has to explain to a team of doctors why I failed at my job on day 1. I had coffee. Coffee isn't food. It is if you add enough cream." Was that humor? Marcus looked at her more carefully. She was still staring out the window, but something in her posture had shifted, less defeated, more defiant. "How about we compromise? You take your meds. Let me run through the physical therapy routine Patricia outlined, and I'll make breakfast. Deal." "I'm not hungry." "Didn't ask if you were hungry. Asked if we had a deal." Victoria's fingers drummed on her wheelchair armrest. Finally, she turned to face him. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, making the hazel irises seem even more striking against her pale skin. "Why do you care whether I eat?" "Because that's the job. The job is to keep me alive and quiet. Food is optional." Marcus crossed his arms. "Is that what they told you? That you just need to stay alive and quiet?" "It's what they want. What they've always wanted since the accident. A daughter who doesn't make waves or ask uncomfortable questions or remind everyone of what happened." "And what did happen?" Victoria's expression shuddered immediately. She turned back to the window, and Marcus knew he'd pushed too far too fast. "Forget it," he said quietly. "None of my business. But I'm still not leaving until you eat something and take those pills, so we might as well get comfortable." He pulled up a chair and sat down, prepared to wait. 1 minute passed, then 2. Victoria sat rigid, a statue of stubborn refusal. At 5 minutes, Marcus broke the silence. "Dylan wants to meet you." That got her attention. Her head turned slightly. "My son, he's 8. Asked about you yesterday at the hospital, said he wanted to meet the important person I'd be taking care of." "I'm not important. You are to me. Because you're the reason Dylan gets his surgery. The reason he gets to live." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know this arrangement is weird and uncomfortable and probably the last thing you wanted. But my kid is grateful. He doesn't understand the contract or the money or any of the complicated adult stuff. He just knows someone is helping his dad save his life, and he wants to say thank you." Victoria's hands twisted in her lap. "When is his surgery?" "End of the 6 months. Dr. Chen wants to stabilize him first, build up his strength, make sure everything's optimized before they operate." "And if it doesn't work?" Marcus's throat tightened. "Then I'll have given him 6 more months. 6 months of hope instead of waiting to die in a cramped apartment with medical bills we could never pay. That's worth something." Victoria reached for her phone, typed slowly. "Bring him next week, when he's settled." "You don't have to." "I want to." Her mechanical voice cut him off. "If he wants to meet me, I'll meet him." Marcus felt something unknot in his chest. "Thank you." She waved a hand dismissively, then wheeled herself toward the table where Marcus had left the pills. She took them efficiently, washing them down with water from a glass that had been sitting there so long condensation had pooled around its base. "There. Happy. Getting there. Now let's talk about breakfast." "I told you. I'm making eggs and toast. You're eating at least half. Non-negotiable." Victoria glared at him, but there was no real heat in it. "You're going to be annoying, aren't you?" "Probably. I've been told I'm stubborn." "Fine, make your eggs, but I'm not promising to like them." Marcus grinned despite himself. "I'll take that as a victory." He found the kitchen a massive space with restaurant-grade appliances and enough counter space to run a catering business. Everything was precisely organized, labeled pristine. Marcus felt like he was defiling a museum just by opening the refrigerator. But he cooked the way he always had, efficiently, without fuss. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh fruit from a bowl that probably cost more than his truck. He made enough for two and brought it back to Victoria's room on a tray. She was working on her laptop when he returned some kind of database open on the screen. She closed it quickly when he entered, but not before Marcus caught a glimpse of plant names and Latin classifications. "You were serious about the botany thing," he said, setting the tray down. "I told you I studied it." "Studied" is past tense. That looked like active research. Victoria's jaw tightened. "It's just a hobby. Something to pass time." Marcus sat down with his own plate, taking a bite of eggs before speaking. "Sarah, my wife, she used to say hobbies were practice for the things we were too scared to do for real. She wanted to write novels, but always called it journaling. Thousands of pages of journaling that were really complete stories she was too afraid to show anyone." "Did she ever show them?" "No. She died before she could work up the courage." Marcus stared at his plate. "I found them after. Boxes of notebooks filled with stories about strong women fighting for things that mattered. They were good. Really good. And nobody ever got to read them because she was afraid they wouldn't be perfect." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her fork and took a small bite of eggs. "These are terrible." Marcus laughed. "Yeah, I know. I'm a welder, not a chef." "Then why did you make them?" "Because terrible eggs are better than no eggs. And sometimes we do things badly because doing them at all matters more than doing them perfectly." Victoria took another bite, then another. She ate half the plate before setting her fork down with a decisive clink. "There. Satisfied?" "More than you know." The physical therapy session was awkward and painful. Marcus following Patricia's detailed instructions, moving Victoria's legs through range of motion exercises, while she gritted her teeth against discomfort she refused to acknowledge. Her legs were thin muscles atrophied from 18 months of disuse, but Marcus could feel the ghost of who she'd been, an active woman who'd probably hiked and danced and lived without thinking about every movement. "You're too tense," he said, pausing mid-stretch. "The exercises work better if you can relax into them." "I can't relax when someone is bending my legs in directions they don't want to go." "They used to go these directions. Your body remembers even if your brain is scared." Victoria's eyes flashed. "My brain isn't scared. My body is broken." "Your body is hurt. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, they feel exactly the same." Marcus carefully lowered her leg back to the wheelchair footrest. He'd pushed enough for one day. "We're done for now. Tomorrow morning, same time." "Do I have a choice?" "Not really, but I'll pretend you do if it makes you feel better." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You're strange." "I've been called worse." The days developed a rhythm. Marcus woke early, checked on Victoria, managed her medication and therapy, then drove to Mercy Hospital to spend afternoons with Dylan. His son was improving daily color, returning to his cheeks, energy levels rising as Dr. Chen's treatment plan took effect. Dylan talked constantly about the upcoming surgery, about what he'd do when he was better, about the camping trip Marcus had promised. "Did you ask her yet?" Dylan said one afternoon 4 days into the arrangement. "Did you ask Victoria if I can visit?" She said yes. "Maybe next week when you're feeling stronger." "I'm strong now," Dylan insisted, then immediately started coughing, a reminder that strength was relative and 8-year-old enthusiasm didn't override medical reality. Marcus held him through the coughing fit, familiar terror rising and falling with his son's breathing. "Soon, buddy. I promise." But that night when Marcus returned to the estate, he found Victoria wasn't in her room. Patricia mentioned she'd gone to the conservatory, her refuge apparently when the walls of the house closed in too tight. Marcus found her among the plants, wheelchair positioned near a flowering orchid, staring at it with an intensity that seemed like she was trying to memorize every petal. "Everything okay?" he asked from the doorway. She didn't startle. "Define okay." "Fair point." Marcus stepped inside the humid air, wrapping around him like a living thing. I came to tell you Dylan's asking about visiting. Says he's ready, though the doctors say give it another week. Bring him tomorrow. Victoria. I said bring him tomorrow. She turned to face Marcus, and something in her expression was different, more present, more determined. He's dying, right? That's why you're here. Because without this arrangement, your son dies. Yeah. Then don't make him wait because doctors want to be cautious. Bring him tomorrow. Let him see that I'm real, that this wasn't all some story you made up to help him through treatment. Marcus moved closer, studying her face in the strange greenhouse light. What changed? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. I just realized I've spent 18 months waiting to feel like living again, and maybe that's not how it works. Maybe you just start doing things even when you're not ready, even when it's terrifying, and eventually it starts to feel less like dying slowly. That's pretty wise for someone who claims to be broken. I didn't say I wasn't broken. I said maybe being broken doesn't mean you can't do things. Marcus crouched down beside her wheelchair. Can I tell you something? She nodded. I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met, and I've known a lot of strong people. You don't know me. I know you survived something that should have killed you. I know you wake up every day in a body that won't cooperate, and a house full of people who want you to be someone you're not, and you're still here, still trying. That's strength, Victoria. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back furiously. Don't. Don't what? Don't make me feel things. I've worked very hard not to feel things. Why? Because feeling things means acknowledging what I lost. And I can't do that and survive. Marcus stood up slowly. Then don't survive. Live. There's a difference. He left her sitting among the plants surrounded by green life and impossible blooms, and he hoped desperately, irrationally, that somehow his words had reached the part of her that was still fighting. The next afternoon, Marcus brought Dylan to the estate. His son was nervous, clutching Marcus's hand as they walked through the endless corridors toward the conservatory where Victoria had asked to meet them. What if she doesn't like me? Dylan whispered. She'll like you. Everyone likes you. Not everyone. Billy Henderson says I'm weird because I have to use my inhaler. Billy Henderson is an idiot. Marcus squeezed his son's hand. You're not weird. You're brave. They found Victoria positioned near her orchids wearing actual clothes instead of sweatpants. Dark jeans, a soft blue sweater that made her eyes look more green than brown. She'd done something with her hair, pulled it back in a way that looked intentional rather than defeated. She looked nervous. Victoria, this is Dylan. Dylan, this is Victoria. Dylan stepped forward with the fearlessness of children who haven't learned to be intimidated by wheelchairs or silence. Hi. Dad says you like plants. Victoria blinked, clearly not expecting such directness. She reached for her phone, but Dylan was already moving toward the nearest flowering vine. What's this one called? It's pretty. We had a plant once, but it died because I forgot to water it, and Dad said that's okay because sometimes we forget things when we're sad. Victoria's fingers hovered over her phone screen. Then slowly she lowered it. Passion flower, she said aloud. Her voice was hoarse, rusty, barely above a whisper, but it was her voice, real and human and there. Marcus froze. Dylan didn't seem to notice anything unusual. Passion flower. That's a weird name. Is it because you have to be passionate to grow it? Victoria's throat worked. Because of the flower structure. Spanish missionaries thought it symbolized Christ's passion. Oh. Dylan considered this. I like the regular reason better. Things should have passionate names. And then Victoria laughed. It was small and rusty and sounded like it hurt, but it was real. Dylan grinned, proud of himself. Dad says you're helping him save my life. Is that true? Victoria's expression softened. She looked at Marcus, then back at Dylan. Your dad is helping me too. How you're not sick like me? No, But I'm stuck. And your dad is showing me maybe I don't have to stay stuck forever. Dylan nodded sagely, like this made perfect sense in his 8-year-old logic. Dad's good at unstucking things. He fixed my Lego Death Star when I thought it was broken forever. I bet he did. They spent an hour in the conservatory. Dylan asked approximately 700 questions about plants, and Victoria answered in her halting, rusty voice, seeming to gain strength with each word. Marcus watched them together, his son's innocent enthusiasm drawing out the woman Victoria used to be, or maybe the woman she was becoming. When Dylan started to flag, showing signs of exhaustion, Marcus said it was time to go. Dylan hugged Victoria goodbye without hesitation, wrapping his small arms around her shoulders. Thank you for showing me your plants. Can I come back? Victoria's arms came up slowly, awkwardly, but she hugged him back. Anytime. After Marcus drove Dylan back to the hospital and settled him for the night, he returned to find Victoria still in the conservatory. She was crying silent tears streaming down her face, shoulders shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for hours. Marcus didn't ask permission. He just pulled up a chair and sat beside her while she broke apart, offering his presence and nothing more. Eventually, she gasped out words between sobs. I forgot what it felt like. What? To matter to someone. To be more than the broken girl everyone tiptoes around. You matter, Victoria. He didn't care that I'm in a wheelchair, didn't care that I don't talk most of the time. He just wanted to know about passion flowers. She laughed through her tears. A dying child made me remember why I loved plants in the first place. Marcus reached over and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but they curled around his with surprising strength. Dylan has that effect, makes you remember what's important. I'm sorry you're losing him. I'm not losing him, not if this works. Not if... Marcus's voice cracked. He hadn't let himself break down since signing the contract hadn't allowed the fear space to breathe. But sitting here with Victoria, both of them fighting their own impossible battles, something released. I can't lose him, Marcus whispered. He's all I have left. If the surgery doesn't work, if something goes wrong, I don't know how I'll... Victoria squeezed his hand hard. It will work. It has to. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. And sometimes belief is all we have. They sat together in the conservatory until the sun set and the automatic lights flickered on two people holding on to each other because letting go meant facing the darkness alone. That night marked a shift. Victoria started speaking more, not constantly, and never around her family when they called or visited, but with Marcus and Patricia. Her voice grew stronger daily, losing some of its rust, finding its rhythm. She told Marcus about her botany degree, about the thesis she'd been writing before the accident on trauma-informed garden design for rehabilitation centers. She showed him her research years of work, abandoned when the accident had stolen her mobility and her confidence. Why did you stop? Marcus asked, reading through her meticulous notes and detailed plant specifications. Because I couldn't imagine anyone taking me seriously anymore. Who wants rehabilitation advice from someone who can't rehabilitate herself? Someone who knows exactly what it's like to fight your way back. Victoria was quiet for a long time. I never thought about it like that. Maybe you should. The physical therapy sessions intensified. Victoria pushed herself harder, gritting her teeth through pain that made Marcus wince in sympathy. He spotted her during exercises, encouraging when she wanted to quit, celebrating small victories, like extended range of motion in her left knee. I felt something, she gasped one morning, 2 weeks into the arrangement. In my right foot. Like pins and needles, but more. Marcus's pulse jumped. Can you move it? Victoria stared at her foot with fierce concentration. Nothing happened. Then just barely, her big toe twitched. Oh my God, she breathed. Did you see that? I saw it. Do it again. She couldn't. The toe remained stubbornly still, but the possibility hung in the air between them. What if the paralysis wasn't permanent? What if her body was waiting for permission to heal? "We tell Dr. Reeves," Marcus said, referring to Victoria's neurologist. "This is significant." "No." Victoria's voice was sharp. "We don't tell anyone." "Victoria, if I tell them and it doesn't happen again, they'll think I'm desperate or delusional. And if it does happen again, they'll want to study me, run tests, bring in specialists who'll poke and prod and make it about them instead of me." Her eyes were fierce. "This is mine, my body, my recovery, and I'm not sharing it with people who've already decided I'm a lost cause." Marcus understood. "Okay. We keep it between us, but we work on it every day. Push harder. See what else wakes up. You think it's possible that I could actually walk again? I think your body is trying to tell you something, and maybe it's time to listen." They worked in secret. Extended therapy sessions where Marcus guided Victoria through exercises that targeted nerve pathways and muscle memory. Some days nothing happened. Other days, small movements, a toe curl here, a knee flex there, signs of life returning to limbs that had forgotten their purpose. Victoria's mood improved dramatically. She smiled, more laughed at Marcus's terrible jokes, even started venturing out of her room for meals. Patricia noticed the change and said nothing, but Marcus caught her smiling when she thought no one was looking. Dylan visited 3 times a week, bringing chaos and joy in equal measure. He told Victoria about his hospital adventures, the nice nurses, the not-so-nice food, his plans for when he was better. Victoria listened like every word mattered, asking questions, remembering details, being the adult presence Dylan desperately needed beyond his worried father. "She's cool," Dylan pronounced after the 3rd visit. "Even cooler than I thought." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "She really is." But the peace couldn't last. 10 days before Dylan's scheduled surgery, Victoria's younger brother showed up unannounced. Brandon Hartwell was 35 and looked like money-expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marcus was helping Victoria in the conservatory when Brandon walked in without knocking. Well, the miracle worker everyone's talking about." Brandon's voice dripped condescension. "Marcus Kane, the welder who's supposedly reaching our unreachable sister." Victoria went rigid in her wheelchair. Marcus positioned himself slightly between them, a protective instinct he didn't analyze. "You must be Brandon. Victoria's mentioned you." "Has she?" Brandon moved closer, studying his sister with the detached interest of someone examining a disappointing investment. "I'm surprised she mentioned anything. Silent treatment is kind of her signature move these days. Maybe she just doesn't have anything to say to you." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "Careful. I can have you thrown out of here in 5 minutes." "No, you can't. I have a contract." Contracts can be broken, especially when the help gets ideas above their station. Marcus felt Victoria's hand on his arm, a warning. But he couldn't back down. Not from this entitled asshole who looked at his sister like she was a problem to manage. "Why are you here, Brandon?" "To check on my sister. Family privilege." Family would have called first, asked permission, respected boundaries. Brandon's practiced smile hardened. "You know nothing about this family or what we've been through. Victoria's accident was traumatic for all of us." "Was it?" Marcus kept his voice level. "Because from where I stand, it seems like Victoria's the only one still living with the trauma while everyone else moved on." "How dare you! Enough!" Victoria's voice cut through, rusty but clear. Both men turned to stare at her. "Get out, Brandon." Her brother's face went white. "You're talking." "I said get out." "Jesus, Victoria, when did this happen? Does Dad know the doctors?" "Don't care. I don't want them to know. I don't want you to know. I want you to leave." Brandon looked between his sister and Marcus, calculation flickering behind his eyes. "You're making a mistake. Whatever story he's fed you, whatever fantasy you're building here, leave. Now." Marcus moved toward Brandon, not threatening but immovable. "You heard her." For a moment, Brandon seemed ready to argue. Then he adjusted his tie, smoothed his expression back to practiced charm, and headed for the door. "I'll be back," he said to Victoria, "when you're thinking clearly." After he left, Victoria started shaking. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair. "You okay?" "No." "Yes, I don't know." Her breathing was rapid, panicked. "He's going to tell Dad. They'll want to know why I'm talking to you and not them. They'll want doctors and tests and, hey, look at me." Marcus took her hands. "We handle this together. Whatever comes, we face it together. You're not alone." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you being so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness. And because—" Marcus stopped, surprised by the truth trying to surface. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a job. She stared at him, something shifting in her expression. "For me too." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Then Marcus's phone rang the hospital. He answered immediately. "Mr. Kane, this is Dr. Chen. We need you to come in right away." Marcus's world tilted. "What's wrong, is Dylan?" "Your son is stable, but his latest tests show some concerning changes. We may need to move up the surgery timeline. Can you be here within the hour?" "I'm on my way." He ended the call, already moving. Victoria grabbed his arm. "Go, I'll be fine." "Victoria, your son needs you. Go." Marcus ran. The drive to Mercy Hospital felt like moving through water. Every red light stretched into eternity, every mile marker a reminder that Marcus couldn't control what was happening to his son's fragile heart. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight, his knuckles went white, and he kept seeing Dylan's face, pale and trusting, believing Dad could fix anything. Dr. Chen met him outside Dylan's room, his expression carefully neutral, in that way doctors practiced when delivering news that would shatter someone's world. "His heart rhythm has become increasingly irregular. We're managing it with medication, but I'm concerned about waiting another 10 days. The valve is deteriorating faster than we anticipated." Marcus's throat closed. "How much faster?" "We need to operate within the week, possibly sooner." Dr. Chen's hand landed on Marcus's shoulder. "I know this isn't what we planned, but Dylan is strong. The earlier intervention might actually improve his odds." "Might?" "Surgery always carries risk, Mr. Kane. You know that. But waiting carries greater risk now. His heart is working too hard, and every day increases the strain." Marcus pushed into Dylan's room. His son was asleep, oxygen tubes and place monitors beeping their steady rhythm. He looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, a child who should be running and playing and not fighting just to breathe. Marcus sat beside him and took his small hand, feeling the flutter of pulse beneath thin skin. "I'm here, buddy. Dad's here." Dylan's stirred eyes opening slowly. "Did Victoria like the drawing I made her?" Marcus's chest tightened. Dylan had spent an hour yesterday drawing passion flowers from memory, determined to give Victoria something beautiful. Marcus hadn't delivered it yet. "I haven't given it to her. Want me to bring it next time?" "No. Give it to her today. She needs to know I'm thinking about her." Dylan's voice was thin, tired. "Is she okay?" "She seemed sad when we left." "She's dealing with some family stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." "I'm not worried. I know you'll help her." Dylan squeezed his father's hand with surprising strength. "You're good at helping people, Dad, even when you're scared." "I'm not scared." "Yeah, you are. I can tell." Dylan's eyes were too knowing, too old. "It's okay to be scared. Mom used to say brave people are just scared people who do things anyway." Marcus blinked hard against the burning in his eyes. "Your mom was a smart lady." "I miss her." "Me too, buddy. Every single day." Dylan was quiet for a moment, then said, "If something happens during the surgery—" "Nothing's going to happen. But if it does, you have to promise me something." "Dylan, Promise you'll take care of Victoria. Don't let her be alone. Dylan's grip tightened. She needs someone, Dad. Like we needed each other after Mom died. Promise. Marcus couldn't speak past the boulder lodged in his throat. Finally he managed, I promise. Dylan smiled, satisfied, and drifted back to sleep. Marcus sat with him until visiting hours ended, watching his son's chest rise and fall, memorizing every detail in case his memory was all he had left. Then he drove back to the estate in darkness, so complete it felt like drowning. The house was quiet when he returned. Patricia had left a note saying Victoria had asked not to be disturbed, that Brandon's visit had upset her more than she'd admitted. Marcus wanted to check on her anyway, but exhaustion pulled at him like gravity. He collapsed in his room and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally claimed him. He woke at 3 a.m. to sounds from the hallway. Soft whirring of Victoria's wheelchair, the muted gasp of someone trying not to cry. Marcus found her outside his door, hand raised like she'd been about to knock. I heard you come back, she said, voice rough. I waited, but you didn't come to my room and I thought maybe Dylan... He's okay. Surgery's moved up. Maybe this week. Victoria's face crumpled. That's too soon. Yeah. They stared at each other in the dim hallway light, two people holding on to hope by their fingernails. Can I come in? Victoria asked. Marcus stepped aside. She wheeled into his room, glancing around at his sparse belongings, the photo of Sarah on the nightstand, Dylan's drawings taped to the mirror, the work boots by the door. This is very you, she said, meaning, functional, honest, no pretense. She positioned her wheelchair near the window. I've been thinking about what Brandon said, about me making a mistake building a fantasy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Doesn't he look at us, Marcus? You're here because you need money for your son's surgery. I'm here because my family doesn't know what else to do with me. We're both using each other. That's not... Let me finish. Victoria's hands twisted in her lap. When this started, maybe it was just transactional. You get paid, I get someone who treats me like a person instead of a problem. But somewhere along the way, it became real. You became real. And that terrifies me. Marcus moved closer, kneeling so they were eye level. Why does it terrify you? Because everyone leaves. My ex-boyfriend, my friends, even my family in all the ways that matter. They couldn't handle the broken version of me. Why would you be different? Because I don't think you're broken. You have to say that. It's literally your job. No, my job is to help you with physical therapy and medications. Believing you're not broken, that's just me. Marcus reached for her hand. Victoria. I've spent 3 years as a single parent to a dying child. I know what broken looks like, and you're not it. You're hurt. You're scared. You're fighting a battle nobody sees, but you're still here, still trying. That's not broken. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What if I can't get better? What if the movement in my legs doesn't come back? What if I'm in this wheelchair forever? Then we figure it out, together. You can't promise that. After the 6 months. Forget the 6 months. Forget the contract. The words spilled out before Marcus could stop them. Truth he hadn't let himself acknowledge until now. I care about you. Not because of some legal agreement, but because you're funny and smart and stronger than you give yourself credit for. Because Dylan lights up when he talks about you. Because you make me remember what it feels like to want something beyond just surviving. Victoria stared at him, lips parted in shock. Marcus, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible, and we barely know each other, and maybe I'm completely out of line. But I needed you to know that you're not alone. You're not a mistake or a fantasy. You're real, and you matter. She pulled him close, sudden and fierce, her arms wrapping around his neck as she buried her face in his shoulder. Marcus held her, carefully aware of how fragile she felt. How much trust it took for her to reach out when everyone had taught her that reaching out meant getting hurt. I'm so scared. she whispered against his shirt. Of losing this. Of losing you and Dylan. Of going back to being invisible. You're not invisible. Not to us. They held each other while the night deepened around them. Two people clinging to something neither could name, but both desperately needed. Eventually, Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. Brandon is going to tell our father I'm talking. They'll come here with doctors and questions and expectations. Then we deal with it. How? Marcus thought for a moment. We tell the truth. That you've been working with me, that you're making progress, and that you'll speak to them when you're ready. On your terms, not theirs. They won't accept that. They don't have a choice. You're an adult. They can't force you. Victoria laughed bitterly. You don't know my family. They're very good at forcing things while making it look like it's your idea. Then we make it very clear whose idea it is. Your voice, your choice, your timeline. She studied him with an intensity that made Marcus feel seen in ways he hadn't experienced since Sarah died. Why are you fighting for me? You have enough to worry about with Dylan. Because fighting for you doesn't take anything away from fighting for him. It just means I have more to fight for. Victoria reached up and touched his face, fingertips tracing the lines of exhaustion and worry carved into his features. You're a good man, Marcus Kane. I'm trying to be. You're succeeding. Then she kissed him. Soft and tentative, a question more than a statement. Marcus froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back. His hand cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the desperate need behind the gesture. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria whispered, "That was real." Yeah, it was. No going back now. No, there's not. She smiled, shaky but genuine. Good. Marcus helped Victoria back to her room around 4 in the morning, both of them aware they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He lay awake afterward, mind racing through implications and consequences and the terrifying possibility that he was falling for a woman he'd met less than 3 weeks ago under the strangest circumstances imaginable. Morning came too fast. Patricia knocked on his door at 7 with the news that Charles Hartwell, Victoria's father, was arriving at 9 and expected both Victoria and Marcus to be available. He knows she's talking, Marcus asked. Brandon called him last night. Mr. Hartwell is bringing Dr. Magda, Morrison, Victoria's primary neurologist, and apparently has arranged for a team from Johns Hopkins to evaluate her. Without asking her permission, Patricia's expression was grim. The Hartwells don't typically ask permission. They expect compliance. Marcus found Victoria, already dressed, sitting rigidly in her wheelchair, staring out her window at the gardens below. My father's coming. I heard. We don't have to do this if you're not ready. I'll never be ready, but I can't hide forever. She turned to face him. Stay with me when they get here. I'm not going anywhere. Charles Hartwell arrived precisely at 9 in a black Mercedes that cost more than Marcus's entire welding business. He was 62, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably required its own insurance policy. Authority radiated from him like heat, the kind of man who expected doors to open before he reached them. Dr. Morrison followed efficient detached carrying files that presumably contained Victoria's entire medical history. Behind them came 2 specialists from Johns Hopkins introduced, with titles so long Marcus lost track halfway through. They assembled in the conservatory at Victoria's request. Marcus stood behind her wheelchair, a silent support she could feel, even if she couldn't see. Victoria. Charles's voice was warm but controlled. Brandon tells me you've been speaking. This is wonderful news. Is it? The question hung in the humid air. Charles blinked, thrown by his daughter's flat tone. Of course it is. We've been praying for your recovery. Dr. Morrison, perhaps you could explain the evaluation protocol. No. Everyone stopped. Charles frowned. I beg your pardon. I said no. I'm not being evaluated. I'm not letting strangers poke at me or run tests or determine whether my progress is medically significant. Victoria's voice gained strength with each word. I've been working with Marcus. He's been helping me with physical therapy. I've been speaking more. My body is showing signs of sensation returning, and it's private. Sweetheart, we only want to help. Then respect my boundaries. If I want medical evaluation, I'll ask for it. I don't want it. Charles's jaw tightened. He looked at Marcus. Mr. Kane, perhaps you could help Victoria understand that refusing medical care— Miss Hartwell understands perfectly, Marcus interrupted. She's making an informed choice about her own body. That's not something I need to explain to her. Who are you to speak for my daughter? I'm not speaking for her. She's speaking for herself. You're just not listening. The temperature in the conservatory dropped about 20 degrees. Dr. Morrison cleared his throat awkwardly. The Johns Hopkins specialists exchanged glances that said they wanted to be anywhere else. Charles studied Marcus with the cold assessment of someone used to eliminating obstacles. Mr. Kane, I appreciate your dedication to your role here, but family matters. Include me now. Victoria's voice cut through. Marcus isn't just an employee. He's been more family to me in 3 weeks than any of you have been in 18 months. That's not fair, Victoria. We've been supportive. Supportive? Victoria's laugh was sharp. You paid people to make me comfortable. You hired nurses and therapists and care managers. You bought me equipment and medication and every possible accommodation. But none of you actually spent time with me. None of you sat with me when I cried. None of you asked what I needed instead of telling me what I should want. We were giving you space to heal. You were giving yourselves space to pretend the accident didn't happen, to not deal with the uncomfortable reality of having a disabled daughter who wouldn't cooperate with your timeline for recovery. Charles's face flushed. That's absurd. We love you. Do you? Victoria wheeled herself forward closer to her father. Then tell me what I've been doing the last 3 weeks. What I care about. What makes me happy. Silence. You can't. Because you don't know. Because knowing would require actually talking to me instead of about me. Victoria's voice broke. I'm not a problem to manage, Dad. I'm your daughter. And I needed you. I still need you. But not like this. Not with teams of doctors and evaluation protocols and expectations that I'll magically become who I was before. We just want you to get better. I am getting better, just not in the ways you decided I should. Charles looked genuinely shaken, possibly the first time Marcus had seen the man show real emotion. He sat down heavily on a nearby bench, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. What do you want from us, Victoria? I want you to ask me questions and listen to the answers. I want you to acknowledge what happened instead of pretending we can move past it. I want you to hold Brandon accountable instead of sweeping everything under expensive rugs. Her voice hardened. And I want you to stop treating my recovery as a reflection of your parenting instead of my journey. Dr. Morrison stepped forward carefully. Victoria, if you're experiencing sensation returning, that's medically significant. I'm not saying you need to be evaluated by strangers, but perhaps I could— No, not yet. When I'm ready, I'll come to you. Right now, I need to do this my way. The doctor nodded slowly. Fair enough. But please know my door is open whenever you want it. The Johns Hopkins specialists made their excuses and left. Dr. Morrison followed after a brief, awkward goodbye. Charles remained staring at his daughter like she was a stranger. Brandon said something happened in the accident. That you know something about it. Is that true? Victoria went very still. Marcus felt tension radiating from her like electricity. Yes. Will you tell me? No. Why not? Because you already know, Dad. You've always known. You just chose to believe Brandon's version because it was easier than accepting the truth. Charles's face went ashen. Victoria. He was drunk. He'd been drinking at that fundraiser even though he swore he'd stopped. I tried to get him to give me the keys, but he insisted he was fine. And then, her voice cracked. And then we weren't fine. And you paid everyone to say it was just an accident. A tragic, unavoidable accident. Your brother made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But destroying his life wouldn't change what happened to you. No. But holding him accountable might have given me justice. Might have given me something besides 18 months of silence and pain, and wondering if I mattered less than his reputation. Marcus watched Charles wrestle with truths he'd probably spent 18 months avoiding. To his credit, the man looked genuinely devastated. I didn't know you felt this way. You didn't ask. Charles stood slowly moving toward his daughter with hesitation that suggested he wasn't sure he'd be welcome. May I hug you? Victoria hesitated, then nodded. Her father embraced her carefully, and Marcus saw her arms come up to hold him back, saw both of them shaking with emotion, too big for words. I'm sorry, Charles whispered, for all of it, for not protecting you, for choosing the easy path, for failing you as a father. You can't fix it by apologizing. I know, but maybe I can try to do better going forward. They held each other while Marcus quietly excused himself, giving them privacy. He found Patricia in the kitchen, making tea with shaking hands. I heard most of that through the monitor, she admitted. I probably shouldn't have listened, but it's okay. Is she going to be all right? I don't know, but at least now she's fighting instead of hiding. Patricia poured 2 cups of tea, handing one to Marcus. Mr. Kane, I have to tell you something. About the contract. Marcus's stomach dropped. What about it? The family added a clause I didn't mention before. A performance bonus if Victoria showed significant improvement within the 6-month period. They were hoping you could motivate her in ways medical professionals couldn't. How much? Another $250,000, enough to cover Dylan's long-term care and recovery. Marcus set down his cup carefully. They're paying extra because Victoria is getting better. Yes. And if she'd stayed the same, you'd still get the agreed-upon $500,000 for completing the term. Marcus felt sick. The improvement Victoria was making, the speaking, the small movements, the engagement with life, all of it was literally profitable for him. The better she got, the more money he received. No wonder the Hartwells had hired him. They'd found the perfect incentive structure. Does Victoria know? I don't believe so. Mr. Whitmore handled the contract directly with you. Marcus thought about last night, about Victoria kissing him, about Dylan asking him to take care of her, about how real everything had become, and how much it would hurt Victoria if she discovered there was a financial reward attached to her progress. I can't take that money. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Mr. Kane, your son needs... I know what my son needs. And I know what Victoria needs, and it's not someone who benefits from her getting better. It's someone who cares whether she does or not, for reasons that have nothing to do with money. That's very noble, but practical. I'll figure it out. Marcus stood. Can you get me in touch with Whitmore? I want that clause removed. Donate the bonus to some charity or give it back to the Hartwells. I don't care. But I'm not profiting off Victoria's recovery. Patricia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll make the call. Marcus spent the rest of the day at the hospital with Dylan. Dr. Chen confirmed the surgery was scheduled for 3 days from now, Friday morning, 7 a.m. They'd spent the past 24 hours running final tests, optimizing Dylan's condition, preparing for an operation that would either save his life or end it. Dylan was surprisingly calm about the whole thing. He asked Marcus to bring his drawing to Victoria, made Marcus promise again to take care of her, and then asked the question that shattered Marcus's carefully maintained composure. If I don't wake up, will you be okay? You're going to wake up. But if I don't, will you be okay? Marcus pulled his son close, breathing in the scent of hospital soap, and little boy fighting the terror that threatened to swallow him whole. No, buddy. I won't be okay. I'll be destroyed. You're my heart, Dylan. You're everything. But you'll have Victoria. That's not the same. I know. But it's something. Dylan pulled back to look at his father with those too old, too wise eyes. Promise me you won't be alone. Promise if something happens, you'll let her help you like you helped her. Dylan. Promise, Dad. I promise. Dylan smiled and settled back against his pillows, satisfied he'd extracted the commitment he needed. Marcus sat with him until nurses came to start pre-op protocols, then drove back to the estate with his heart in pieces. Victoria was waiting in his room when he returned, having somehow maneuvered herself up the stairs in her wheelchair through sheer determination. Patricia told me about the surgery timing, she said. Friday morning. Yeah. I want to be there, at the hospital, when it happens. You don't have to. I want to. Dylan asked me to be there and I'm going to be there. Marcus crossed to her, kneeling beside her wheelchair. You'd do that. Spend hours in a hospital waiting room for a kid you've only known 3 weeks. I'd do it for Dylan, and I'd do it for you. She took his face in her hands. You're not going through this alone, Marcus. I won't let you. He kissed her, then desperate and grateful and terrified. Victoria kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands tangling in his hair, both of them trying to pour every unsaid word into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, Marcus whispered, I can't lose him. I know. And I can't lose you either. You won't. I'm not going anywhere. But even as she said it, Marcus wondered if that was a promise anyone could keep. Surgery had risks. Life had risks. Love, because that's what this was becoming impossibly fast and terrifying, had the biggest risks of all. They spent that night together, Victoria sleeping in Marcus's bed while he kept watch from a chair beside her. He studied her face in the dim light, the way her features relaxed in sleep. The slight smile that suggested pleasant dreams, the strength visible even in vulnerability. 3 days until Dylan's surgery. 3 days until everything changed one way or another. Marcus held Victoria's hand and prayed to gods he wasn't sure he believed in that somehow impossibly everyone he loved would survive what was coming. Thursday arrived with the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on Marcus's chest. 24 hours until Dylan went under the knife. 24 hours to pretend everything would be fine when statistics and surgical risks haunted his every thought. He found Victoria in the conservatory at dawn, already dressed, practicing something with fierce concentration. Her right foot was pressed against the wheelchair footrest, toes curling and releasing in tiny, deliberate movements. How long have you been out here? Marcus asked. Since 4. Couldn't sleep. She didn't look up, entirely focused on her foot. I'm trying to do what Dr. Chen will do tomorrow. Preparing, training, making my body remember what it's supposed to do. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair. Victoria. If I can stand, I can be there properly, not just sitting while you pace. I can stand with you, support you physically, not just emotionally. You don't need to stand to support me. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. Dylan asked me to take care of you if something happens. How can I do that from a wheelchair? How can I hold you up if I can't even hold myself up? Hey, look at me. Marcus waited until her eyes met his. You've been holding me up for weeks now. The wheelchair has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with it. I'm trying so hard, Marcus. Every day, pushing and working and believing maybe my body will cooperate. But what if tomorrow comes and I'm still stuck? What if Dylan needs me and I'm useless? You're not useless. You're... Marcus stopped searching for words adequate to what he felt. You're the strongest person I know. Dylan sees it. I see it. The only person who doesn't see it is you. Victoria's hands trembled in her lap. I'm terrified I'll let you both down. Impossible. You've already given us more than you know. She reached for him and Marcus pulled her close, holding her while she shook with the effort of holding herself together. They stayed like that until sunrise painted the conservatory gold, 2 people trying to borrow strength from each other for the nightmare ahead. Patricia appeared at 8 with breakfast neither of them wanted. She also brought news that Charles Hartwell had called wanting to visit Victoria before Dylan's surgery. "Tell him not today," Victoria said immediately. "He's quite insistent. Says he needs to speak with you about Brandon." Victoria's jaw tightened. What about Brandon? He didn't elaborate, but he sounded different, less formal. Marcus watched Victoria wrestle with the decision. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but only for 30 minutes, and Marcus stays with me." Charles arrived at 10 looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 days. The commanding presence from earlier in the week had been replaced by something more human, more broken. He carried a file folder that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. "Victoria, thank you for seeing me." He glanced at Marcus. "Mr. Kane?" "Marcus is staying," Victoria said before her father could suggest otherwise. "I understand. I actually wanted to speak with both of you." Charles sat heavily on a bench near Victoria's wheelchair. "I've spent the last 72 hours reviewing everything about the accident, police reports, medical records, witness statements, and I've had several long conversations with Brandon. And," Victoria's voice was flat-guarded, "and you were right. About all of it." Charles opened the folder with shaking hands. Brandon was legally intoxicated. The accident was entirely his fault, and I paid people to alter reports to lose evidence to ensure my son faced no consequences. The admission hung in the humid air like a living thing. I told myself I was protecting our family, preserving Brandon's future, but really I was protecting myself. From having to acknowledge that I'd raised a son who would drive drunk, that my enabling had created someone capable of such selfishness. Charles looked at his daughter with eyes full of grief. "And in protecting him, I failed you completely." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tomorrow, that young man's son goes into surgery. And I watched Marcus with him at the hospital yesterday, the way he fights for Dylan, the way he'd burn the world down to save that boy. And I realized that's what a parent should do. Fight for their child. Protect them from real threats, not from consequences they've earned." Charles pulled papers from the folder. "I've given these to our family attorney. Full documentation of what really happened. I'm not covering for Brandon anymore. He'll face charges. Probably lose his license. Possibly serve time. Our family name will suffer, and none of it will undo what happened to you, but it's what should have happened 18 months ago." Victoria stared at her father like she was seeing him for the first time. "You're serious?" "Completely. I chose wrong before. I'm choosing right now, even though it's far too late." "What does Brandon say about this?" "He's furious. Hired his own attorneys. Threatened to cut ties with the family." Charles's voice hardened. "But he's also finally starting to understand that actions have consequences. Something I should have taught him decades ago." Victoria's hands gripped her wheelchair armrests. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to do the right thing finally." Charles stood slowly. "Mr. Kane, I want you to know that the contract addendum, the performance bonus, I've had it removed. Whatever progress Victoria makes should be for her benefit, not anyone else's." Marcus exchanged glances with Victoria. "Patricia told you." "She did, and she was right to. The clause was inappropriate and insulting to both of you." Charles looked between them, seeing something that made him pause. "This isn't just a professional arrangement anymore, is it?" "No," Marcus said simply. "It's not." Charles nodded slowly. "Good. Victoria deserves someone who sees her as a person first. I'm sorry it took a stranger to show me what I should have seen all along." After her father left, Victoria sat in silence for so long, Marcus started to worry. Then she spoke, voice small and uncertain. "Do you think people can really change? Or do they just get better at hiding who they've always been?" "I think people can change if they're willing to do the work. Your father seemed willing." "And Brandon? Brandon seems more interested in avoiding consequences than actual change. But who knows? Maybe facing real accountability will shift something." Victoria turned her wheelchair to face Marcus directly. What about us? When the 6 months end, when Dylan recovers, when you don't need the money anymore, do we change back to strangers? Is that what you think will happen? I don't know what to think. This all happened so fast. 3 weeks ago, you were a name on a contract. Now you're... She stopped, struggling with words. Now you're everything. And that's terrifying because everything can disappear so quickly. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't seem to realize she was crying. I'm not disappearing. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens after the 6 months, I'm not walking away from you. You can't promise that. Watch me. He kissed her slowly, trying to pour certainty into the gesture when everything felt uncertain. Victoria kissed back desperately, hands fisting in his shirt, like she was afraid he'd vanish if she let go. When they finally broke apart, she whispered, I think I'm falling in love with you. I think I fell about 2 weeks ago. Just took me until now to admit it. That's terrifying. Yeah, but also the best thing that's happened to me since Dylan was born. They spent the afternoon preparing for the next day. Marcus packed a bag for the hospital, changes of clothes, phone chargers, the book Dylan wanted him to read aloud during recovery. Victoria insisted on coming despite the logistics of transporting her wheelchair and managing her care needs away from the estate. I'll arrange everything, she said firmly. Patricia can drive us. We'll bring my medication. I'll manage. It's going to be a long day, maybe longer. Surgery could take 8 hours. Then I'll be there for 8 hours, or 12, or however long it takes. Marcus didn't argue, partly because he needed her there, and partly because he recognized the determination in her voice, the same determination that had her practicing foot movements at 4 in the morning. That evening, Marcus returned to the hospital for final pre-op visits. Dylan was in good spirits, talking excitedly about waking up with a fixed heart, about all the things he'd do when he was better. Victoria's coming tomorrow, right? Dylan asked. She'll be there. Good. I want her there when I wake up. You and her together. We'll both be there, buddy. Promise. Dylan reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote something. For after the surgery. But if something goes wrong, nothing's going wrong. But if it does, I want you to read it, and I want you to give it to Victoria. Marcus's hands shook as he took the paper. Dylan. Promise, Dad. Promise you'll give it to her. I promise. Dylan smiled and settled back against his pillows. I love you, Dad. I love you too, buddy. More than anything in the world. Marcus stayed until Dylan fell asleep, then sat in the hallway staring at the folded paper in his hands. He shouldn't read it. It was meant for after the surgery, but terror made him unfold it anyway. The handwriting was childish, but careful, Dylan's best penmanship. Dear Dad and Victoria, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Please don't be too sad. I got to have the best dad in the world. And I got to meet Victoria, who is basically the coolest person ever. Dad, you have to promise to take care of her like you took care of me. She needs someone who understands that being broken on the outside doesn't mean you're broken on the inside. And Victoria, you have to promise to take care of Dad. He pretends he's okay, but he's not. He needs someone to make him laugh and remember that life is good even when it's hard. I think you two are supposed to be together. Like how Mom and Dad were supposed to be together. So if I'm gone, don't waste time being sad about me. Just love each other really hard, and that will make me happy wherever I am. Love, Dylan. P.S. Dad, I know you didn't want to read this before the surgery, but I know you did anyway. It's okay. I understand. But I'm going to be fine, so this letter is just for practice. See you after surgery. Marcus broke down in the hallway, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for weeks. A nurse found him like that and quietly brought him water tissues and the kind of understanding that came from seeing too many parents face impossible situations. By the time Marcus pulled himself together and drove back to the estate, it was past midnight. He found Victoria still awake in the conservatory, practicing with her legs in the darkness. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can't stop thinking about tomorrow." She looked up at him and saw his red-rimmed eyes. "What happened?" Marcus handed her Dylan's letter without speaking. Victoria read it slowly, tears streaming down her face by the time she finished. "Oh, Marcus. Oh, God. He's 8 years old, and he's preparing for his own death like it's just another thing that might happen. What kind of world makes an 8-year-old do that?" Victoria reached for him, and Marcus collapsed beside her wheelchair, head in her lap, while she stroked his hair with trembling hands. "He's going to be okay," she whispered. "He has to be okay." "But what if he's not? What if tomorrow is the day I lose everything that matters? Then we'll face it together, me and you. And somehow we'll survive it, because that's what people do. They survive the unsurvivable." "I don't know how to do this, Victoria. I don't know how to walk into that hospital tomorrow and hand my son over to surgeons and just trust that they'll bring him back." "You do it the same way I'm learning to walk again. One impossible step at a time. You show up, you hold on, you believe even when believing feels like lying to yourself." They stayed like that until dawn broke, Marcus kneeling on the floor with his head in Victoria's lap, Victoria's hands in his hair, both of them trying to be strong enough for what was coming. At 5:30 a.m., Patricia helped Marcus get Victoria ready. They drove to the hospital in silence, heavy with anticipation. Victoria had dressed carefully, real clothes, instead of the comfortable sweats she usually wore, makeup that couldn't quite hide her exhaustion, hair pulled back in a way that looked intentional. "You look beautiful," Marcus said. "I look terrified." "That too, but mostly beautiful." Dr. Chen met them outside Dylan's room at 6:15. He reviewed the surgical plan one final time, replacing the defective valve, repairing surrounding tissue, ensuring blood flow normalized. 8 to 10 hours of surgery, high success rate. But risks were always present. "Any questions?" Dr. Chen asked. Marcus had 1,000 questions. Will my son wake up? Will he remember me? Will he have a normal life? Will I survive losing him if something goes wrong? But he only asked one. "Take care of him, please. I will treat him like my own son. I promise you that." They wheeled Dylan away at 6:45. He was groggy from pre-op medication, but managed to smile at Marcus and Victoria. "Love you, Dad. Love you, Victoria." "Love you too, buddy." Then Dylan disappeared through double doors, and Marcus felt like his heart went with him. The waiting room became their prison. Marcus paced endless circles, while Victoria sat in her wheelchair, hands gripping the armrests so tight her knuckles went white. Hours passed like centuries. Patricia brought coffee that went cold. Nurses provided updates that revealed nothing substantial. At hour 3, Marcus sat down beside Victoria. "Thank you for being here. There's nowhere else I'd be. Still, you didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. Dylan asked me to take care of you. I'm starting now." At hour 5, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered with shaking hands. "Mr. Kane, this is Rachel Morrison from Family Services. We need to discuss Dylan's care arrangements going forward." Marcus's blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "It's standard procedure when a single parent's child undergoes major surgery. We need to ensure adequate support systems are in place for recovery. Could you come to my office next week? I have support systems. I have everything he needs." "I'm sure you do. This is just protocol. We'll talk next week." She hung up before Marcus could argue. He stared at his phone, feeling the ground shift beneath him. "What was that?" Victoria asked. "Family Services. They want to discuss Dylan's care arrangements." "That's normal, isn't it? Making sure he'll be safe during recovery. Or they're building a case that I can't provide adequate care. That a single father with no permanent home and no steady income isn't fit to raise a child with ongoing medical needs. They can't do that. Dylan is your son. They can do whatever they decide is in his best interest. And I've spent 3 weeks living in someone else's house caring for someone else with no clear plan for after the 6 months end. From the outside it probably looks unstable. Victoria grabbed his hand. Then we make it stable. We figure it out together. Victoria. I mean it. You're not losing Dylan. Not to a failed surgery, and not to some bureaucrat who doesn't understand that the best thing for that boy is his father. We'll fight this, whatever it takes. At hour 7, Dr. Chen emerged looking exhausted but satisfied. The surgery went well, very well actually. Dylan's heart responded beautifully to the new valve. All repairs look solid. He's being moved to ICU for recovery monitoring. Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but feel relief so intense it hurt. He's okay, Victoria whispered. He's okay. He'll need time to heal, and there's always risk of complications, but barring unforeseen issues, Dylan should make a full recovery. Marcus dropped into a chair, head in his hands, and wept. Victoria wheeled close, wrapping her arms around him, both of them shaking with the release of terror they'd been holding for hours. He's okay, Marcus repeated like a prayer. He's okay. They let Marcus see Dylan 40 minutes later. His son looked impossibly small in the ICU bed tubes and monitors everywhere, but his chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. Marcus took his hand carefully, feeling the flutter of pulse beneath thin skin. Hey, buddy. You did great. Surgery's over. You're going to be fine. Dylan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but present. Dad? I'm here. Right here. Victoria. She's here too, waiting to see you. Good. Dylan's eyes closed again. Told you I'd be fine. Letter was just practice. He drifted back to sleep, and Marcus laughed through fresh tears. Victoria was allowed in 10 minutes later. She'd been practicing with her walker during the wait, determined to stand when she saw Dylan. Marcus helped her from wheelchair to walker, supporting her weight as she took trembling steps toward Dylan's bedside. I'm standing, she whispered, gripping the walker with white-knuckle intensity. Look, Dylan, I'm standing. Dylan's eyes opened, briefly focused on Victoria standing beside his bed. He smiled satisfied and murmured, Knew you could do it. Then he slept healing, while Marcus and Victoria kept vigil beside him. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Monitors beeped their steady reassurance. And slowly, cautiously, Marcus let himself believe that maybe impossibly, everything was going to be okay. At 8 p.m., Victoria's legs gave out. Marcus caught her, helping her back to the wheelchair. She was trembling with exhaustion but smiling. I stood for almost 6 hours. On and off, but still. 6 hours. You were amazing. I wanted to be strong for Dylan. For you. You were. You are. They stayed at the hospital through the night, taking turns sleeping in chairs while the other watched Dylan. By morning, Dylan was more alert, complaining about the tubes and asking when he could eat real food, all signs the nurses said were excellent. Dr. Chen visited at 9 a.m. to check Dylan's progress. He was beaming. This is exactly what we hope to see. Strong vitals, good color, responding well to all stimuli. If he continues like this, we'll move him to a regular room tomorrow and start physical therapy by the end of the week. And long-term, Marcus asked. Barring complications, Dylan should live a completely normal life. He'll need follow-up care, annual checkups, but the heart defect is corrected. This surgery gave him everything we hoped it would. Marcus felt Victoria's hand squeeze his. They'd made it through. Dylan was going to survive, was going to live, was going to have a future. Later that afternoon, with Dylan sleeping peacefully and nurses assuring them he was stable, Marcus and Victoria stepped outside for air. The autumn sky was clear, temperature cool, everything feeling sharp and new after the suspended reality of the hospital. We did it, Victoria said. He's going to be okay. Yeah, he is. Now what? Marcus looked at her, this woman who'd been a stranger 4 weeks ago, and was now someone he couldn't imagine living without. Now we figure out the rest. Family services, the contract ending, what happens next. Together. If you'll have me. Victoria stood from her wheelchair, gripping her walker, and took 3 shaking steps toward Marcus. He met her halfway, catching her when her legs wobbled, holding her steady. "I'll have you," she whispered against his chest, "for as long as you'll stay." That might be forever, still interested, especially if it's forever. Marcus kissed her there in the hospital parking lot, both of them crying and laughing and holding each other like they'd just survived a war. Because they had. And somehow, impossibly, they'd survived it together. Dylan's recovery over the next 2 weeks felt like watching spring arrive after an endless winter. Each day brought small victories, sitting up without assistance, taking his first steps down the hospital corridor with a walker, eating solid food without nausea, laughing at cartoons on the television, like the 8-year-old he'd never really gotten to be. Marcus practically lived at the hospital, leaving only when nurses insisted he needed sleep. Victoria came every day despite the exhaustion that left her trembling by evening, determined to be present for Dylan's milestones. They developed a rhythm. Marcus would help with Dylan's physical therapy in the mornings, while Victoria worked on her own exercises in the waiting room. Then they'd switch in the afternoons, giving each other breaks, neither really wanted, but both desperately needed. On day 9, post-surgery, Dr. Chen delivered the news they'd been waiting for. Dylan can go home in 3 days. His recovery is exceptional, better than we could have hoped. Home. The word hung between Marcus and Victoria, like a question neither knew how to answer. The contract had 3 months remaining. Marcus was still technically living at the Hartwell estate. But the apartment above the dry cleaner was long gone, sold to pay medical bills before the surgery. Marcus had no home to take Dylan to. "We need to talk about that," Victoria said after Dr. Chen left. They were sitting in Dylan's room while he napped, the first real privacy they'd had in days. "About where you'll go when Dylan is discharged. I've been looking at rentals, found a few possibilities. Stay at the estate." Marcus stopped. "Victoria, the contract doesn't end for 3 months. You're entitled to stay. Dylan needs stability during recovery. And I..." She paused, fingers twisting in her lap. "I need you there. Both of you. That's not fair to you. You're making progress. You don't need us underfoot. I need you because I'm making progress. Can't you see that everything good that's happened in the last month happened because you pushed me to try? Because Dylan made me remember why living matters. If you leave now..." Her voice cracked. "I'm afraid I'll stop trying again." Marcus moved closer, taking her hands. "You won't. You're stronger than that." "Maybe. But I don't want to find out. Please, Marcus, stay. At least until the contract ends. Then we can figure out what comes next." The meeting with Rachel Morrison from Family Services was scheduled for Dylan's 12th day of recovery. Marcus arrived at her office with Victoria beside him. Both of them prepared for a fight. Rachel was younger than Marcus expected, mid-30s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the worn look of someone who cared too much about impossible situations. "Mr. Kane, thank you for coming. Miss Hartwell, I wasn't expecting you." "I'm here as support," Victoria said firmly, "and as someone who can speak to Marcus's character and capability as a father." Rachel nodded slowly, reviewing files on her desk. "Mr. Kane, I want to be clear, this isn't an investigation. We're not trying to remove Dylan from your care. We're simply ensuring adequate support systems exist for his recovery and ongoing medical needs." "What does that mean?" "It means children with significant medical histories require stable environments, housing, income, access to healthcare, emotional support." Rachel looked up. "Your situation is complicated. You're currently living in someone else's home under a temporary employment contract. You have no permanent residence. Your previous income as a welder, while respectable, may not cover Dylan's long-term medical expenses even with insurance. I have money from the contract. Temporary money. What happens when that contract ends in 3 months? Where will you live?" How will you support Dylan? Victoria leaned forward. He'll live with me. Both Marcus and Rachel turned to stare at her. Excuse me, Rachel said. Marcus and Dylan will live with me, at the Hartwell estate, permanently if they choose. I have more than adequate space resources, and I'm invested in Dylan's well-being. Victoria's voice gained strength with each word. Marcus has been providing care for me while I recover from my own medical situation. That arrangement can continue long-term, providing him stable employment and housing while ensuring Dylan has everything he needs. Miss Hartwell, while that's generous, I need to ensure this arrangement is in Dylan's best interest, not just convenient for the adults involved. It's in everyone's best interest. Dylan has formed a bond with me. I've become someone he trusts, someone who understands what it's like to have a body that doesn't cooperate. And Marcus. Victoria's hand found his. Marcus has given me reasons to fight for recovery. They're my family now, not by blood, but by choice. And that matters. Rachel studied them both for a long moment. Are you two romantically involved? Yes, they said simultaneously. How long? Not long enough for it to make sense on paper, Marcus admitted. But long enough that I know I love her, and that Dylan loves her, and that whatever happens with the contract or housing or anything else, we're figuring it out together. Rachel made notes, her expression unreadable. I'll need to visit the estate, see Dylan's living arrangements, interview him privately about his feelings regarding this setup, and I'll need documentation of Miss Hartwell's willingness to provide long-term housing and support. Whatever you need, Victoria said. I'll provide everything. After the meeting, Marcus drove them back to the hospital in silence. Finally, Victoria spoke. I meant what I said, about you staying permanently. Victoria, you can't just offer your home to someone you've known 5 weeks. Why not? You offered your care to someone you'd never met. You signed a contract with a stranger because your son needed help. I'm doing the same thing, offering help to someone who needs it. That's different. How? Marcus pulled into the hospital parking lot and killed the engine. Because you're asking out of emotion, not necessity. Because in 3 months, when Dylan is healthy and you're walking without assistance, you might regret having us in your space. Because I don't want to be someone you feel obligated to support. Victoria unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to face him fully. You think this is obligation? You think I'm offering my home because I feel sorry for you. I think you're grateful I helped you when you needed it, and gratitude can feel like love when you're vulnerable. Don't. Her voice went cold. Don't diminish what I feel because you're scared. I know the difference between gratitude and love, Marcus. I spent 18 months having people tell me what I felt, what I needed, what was best for me. I'm done with people deciding my emotions aren't real. I'm not saying they're not real. Then what are you saying? Marcus gripped the steering wheel, staring through the windshield. I'm saying I'm terrified of needing you too much, of Dylan needing you too much. Of building a life in your house and then having it disappear when you realize we're more trouble than we're worth. Victoria reached over and turned his face toward her. I'm terrified too. Of you leaving. Of losing Dylan. Of going back to that empty, silent existence where nothing matters and nobody sees me. But I'd rather be terrified together than safe and alone. Marcus kissed her desperately, trying to pour every fear and hope into the connection between them. She kissed back with equal intensity, both of them breathing hard when they finally broke apart. Okay, Marcus whispered. We'll stay. But the moment you change your mind, I won't. But if you do tell me, don't let us become an obligation you resent. Deal. Same goes for you. The moment you want to leave, tell me. Deal. Dylan came home to the Hartwell estate on a Tuesday afternoon, riding in a wheelchair he didn't really need, but insisted on using so he could race Victoria down the long corridors. Patricia had converted the guest room into a proper bedroom for him. Bright colors, space for toys, a window overlooking the gardens where Dylan could watch birds and squirrels. "This is amazing," Dylan breathed, taking in the room. "Is this really for me?" "Really and truly," Victoria said. "For as long as you want it. Forever." Victoria glanced at Marcus. "If that's what you want." "That's what I want." Dylan grinned. "Can I go see the conservatory now? I want to check on the passion flowers." Over the following weeks, the three of them developed a life that felt increasingly normal, despite its unusual foundations. Marcus helped Victoria with physical therapy, while Dylan did his own exercises, the three of them encouraging each other through pain and frustration. They ate meals together at the kitchen table, Dylan chattering about everything and nothing, while Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances that said more than words. Victoria's progress accelerated. She could walk independently for hours now, using her wheelchair only when exhausted. Her voice grew stronger daily, losing the rusty quality that had marked those first tentative words. She started attending online classes again, working toward finishing her botany degree, showing Dylan plant diagrams, and teaching him Latin names that made him laugh. Marcus found welding work at a local fabrication shop 3 days a week, enough to feel useful without leaving Dylan for long stretches. He paid Victoria rent from his earnings, despite her protests, needing the dignity of contribution, even though she insisted it was unnecessary. But the ghost of the contract ending loomed. 8 weeks. 6 weeks. 4 weeks. Neither Marcus nor Victoria mentioned it directly, both afraid that naming it would make it real. The reckoning came from an unexpected source. Charles Hartwell showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning, finding all three of them in the conservatory. Dylan was helping Victoria repot an orchid, while Marcus fixed a broken trellis. "This is domestic," Charles observed. "Dad, I didn't know you were coming." "I should have called, but I wanted to see something with my own eyes." Charles looked around the conservatory, Victoria standing without assistance, laughing at something Dylan said, Marcus working comfortably in the space like he belonged. "You're happy." Victoria blinked, surprised. "Yes, I am." "Good. That's what I came to say. You look happy, healthy. More yourself than I've seen you in 2 years." Charles turned to Marcus. "Thank you for that. Victoria did the work. I just showed up." "You did more than show up. You gave her reasons." Charles paused. "I won't pretend our family hasn't been complicated by recent events. Brandon's trial starts next month. The press has been brutal. Our reputation has taken significant damage. But watching you now, seeing this," he gestured at the three of them, "this matters more than any of that." "What are you saying, Dad?" "I'm saying the contract ends in 4 weeks. And I'm saying I hope you'll ignore it completely. Stay here. Build whatever this is into something permanent. This house has been empty of real life for too long. Having you fill it with joy again." Charles's voice broke. "That's worth more than any reputation or social standing." After her father left, Dylan immediately asked the question, "Does that mean we get to stay forever?" "Would you want that?" Victoria asked carefully. "Living here permanently with me?" "Are you kidding? This place is awesome. And you're awesome. And Dad's happier than I've ever seen him." Dylan looked between them. "We're family now, right? So families should live together." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "We're family." That night, after Dylan fell asleep, Marcus and Victoria sat in the conservatory where so much of their story had unfolded. 4 weeks until the contract ends," Victoria said. "Yeah. We should probably talk about what happens after." Marcus took her hand. "I think your dad already told us what happens after. We stay. We build a life together. We figure out the complicated parts as we go." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Complicated, but simple." Marcus pulled her close. "I love you. You love me. Dylan loves you. You love Dylan. Everything else is just details. Those details include the fact that we've known each other barely 3 months. That we started this arrangement because you needed money and I needed help. That anyone looking at us from outside would say we're moving too fast, building on unstable ground. What do you say? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I say I've spent 18 months moving too slowly, being cautious, waiting to feel ready. And all that caution bought me was loneliness and silence. Maybe moving fast is exactly what I need. Maybe building on ground that shifted under us means we learn to balance together. So we're doing this, really doing this. I want to. But Marcus, I need to know you're not staying out of gratitude or obligation. That you're choosing me because it's what you genuinely want. Marcus cupped her face in his scarred hands. I'm choosing you because walking away from you would feel like cutting off a limb. Because Dylan asks about you first thing every morning. Because I wake up in this house and feel like I finally found the home I've been looking for since Sarah died. Because you make me want to be better, do better, build something that lasts. That's a good answer. It's the truth. Victoria kissed him slowly, thoroughly, trying to show him everything words couldn't capture. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Okay, we're doing this, building something permanent. Together. Together. The final week of the contract arrived with surprising normalcy. No dramatic crisis, no last-minute complication, just life continuing forward with the three of them learning to navigate their unconventional family structure. Dylan returned to school thriving in ways that made Marcus's chest tight with gratitude. He told his classmates about his bonus mom, who knew everything about plants and could finally walk without a wheelchair. He drew pictures of their family, always three people now, always together. Victoria finished her degree requirements and immediately started planning the rehabilitation garden project she'd dreamed about before the accident. She applied for grants, contacted hospitals, designed spaces where broken people could learn to grow alongside broken plants. Marcus helped with the physical labor, building raised beds and trellises, while Victoria directed from her wheelchair on days when her legs needed rest. On the last day of the contract, Marcus woke early and found Victoria already awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Kept thinking about the first day you arrived. How angry I was that my family hired someone to manage me. How determined I was to stay silent and closed off." She turned to face him. "I was so stupid." "You were protecting yourself." "I was hiding. There's a difference." Victoria traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "Thank you for not letting me hide forever. Thank you for not letting me drown in fear about Dylan. We saved each other." "Yeah, we did." They lay together, watching sunrise paint the ceiling gold, both aware that this was technically the last day of their arrangement, and neither caring because contracts didn't matter anymore. Patricia knocked at 8 with coffee and knowing smiles. The lawyer called. "Final payment processed. Congratulations on completing the term, Mr. Kane." "Thanks, Patricia." "Will you be moving out today?" Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. "Actually, we're staying, permanently, if that's all right." Patricia's face split into a genuine smile, the first Marcus had seen from her. "It's more than all right. This house needs life in it. You three provide that beautifully." Rachel Morrison conducted her final visit that afternoon, interviewing Dylan privately before meeting with Marcus and Victoria together. "Dylan is thriving," she reported. "Medically, emotionally, socially. He speaks glowingly about both of you, about feeling safe and loved and excited about his future. I'm closing the case with a recommendation that current arrangements continue." "Thank you," Marcus said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "For what it's worth," Rachel added. "I've been doing this work for 12 years. I've seen every kind of family configuration imaginable, and I can tell you that the families who work are the ones where people choose each other consciously and show up consistently. You're doing that. Keep doing it." That evening, the three of them sat in the conservatory, their place, their refuge, their beginning. Dylan was reading aloud from a botany book, stumbling over words, but determined to learn. Victoria corrected him gently, while Marcus worked on a new trellis design, all of them comfortable in each other's presence. "Hey, Dad." Dylan looked up from his book. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you going to marry Victoria for real? Like with a ceremony and everything?" Marcus nearly dropped his welding torch. Victoria went very still. "Very. We haven't really discussed." "Because I think you should. She's already basically my mom. Might as well make it official." "Dylan, marriage is complicated." "No, it's not. You love her. She loves you. That's what marriage is." Dylan said it with the simple logic of children who hadn't learned to complicate things. "Plus, then I could call her mom instead of just Victoria. If she wanted me to." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "You want to call me mom? I mean, if that's okay. You do mom things. Help with homework and make me eat vegetables and teach me stuff. And you care about me like mom did before she died. So yeah, it seems like you're my mom now." Victoria looked at Marcus helplessly, clearly overwhelmed. Marcus set down his tools and moved to sit beside her. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "About making this official?" "I think an 8-year-old shouldn't be proposing on your behalf." "Fair point." Marcus turned to Dylan. "Buddy, give us a minute, okay?" Dylan grinned and made himself scarce clearly pleased with the chaos he'd created. Marcus took Victoria's hands. "I wasn't planning to ask like this. I had ideas about doing it right, making it romantic, giving you time to think." Marcus. "But he's right. We love each other. We're building a life together. Dylan wants you as his mom, and I want you as my wife. Not because of contracts or obligations, but because I can't imagine a future that doesn't include you." Victoria was crying openly now. "We barely know each other. We know the important things. I know you're brave even when you're terrified. I know you'd fight through pain to stand beside someone you care about. I know you make Dylan laugh and push me to be better and fill empty houses with life. I know I love you more than I thought I could love anyone after Sarah. What else do I need to know? That I snore. That I'm terrible at mornings. That I have nightmares about the accident. That some days my legs don't work and I need help with everything and I hate feeling dependent." "Okay, I snore too. I'm great at mornings but useless after 9 p.m. I have nightmares about losing Dylan. Some days I can't stop thinking about Sarah and I feel guilty for being happy. We're both disasters. Want to be disasters together officially?" Victoria laughed through her tears. "That's possibly the worst proposal in history." "Yeah, I know. I'm a welder, not a poet. Ask me properly." Marcus slid off the chair and knelt in front of her wheelchair, taking both her hands in his scarred, calloused ones. "Victoria Hartwell, you were supposed to be a contract I fulfilled, a job I completed, a transaction that saved my son's life. But somewhere between your silence and Dylan's surgery, between dying plants and learning to stand again, you became everything. My partner. My love. My home. Will you marry me, not for money or obligation or convenience, but because we choose each other? Because we're better together than apart. Because I want to spend the rest of my life standing beside you, literally and figuratively." Victoria pulled him up and kissed him, crying and laughing simultaneously. When she finally pulled back, she whispered, "Yes. Yes to all of it." Dylan's cheer from the doorway suggested he'd been listening the whole time. They married 3 months later in the conservatory, surrounded by flowers Victoria had nursed back to health. Dylan served as best man, wearing a suit that made him look impossibly grown up. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Charles Hartwell walked Victoria down the makeshift aisle, holding his daughter's arm as she walked steady and sure. The ceremony was simple, just close friends and family promises made without lawyers or contracts. 2 people choosing each other because love demanded nothing less. When the officiant pronounced them married, Dylan whooped so loud he startled the birds outside. Marcus kissed his wife, and felt everything broken in him finally start to heal. 6 months later, Victoria's rehabilitation garden opened at Mercy Hospital. Dylan cut the ribbon, proud of his mom's accomplishment. The garden was designed for patients recovering from trauma, raised beds for wheelchair users, sensory plants for those rebuilding nerve connections, quiet spaces for people who needed silence to heal. A plaque near the entrance read, "For those learning to grow again, may you find patience with your roots and courage for new blooms." Marcus watched Victoria give the dedication speech confident and radiant and marveled at how far they'd both come, from desperate strangers signing contracts to a family choosing each other daily. Dylan tugged his sleeve. "Dad, this is pretty cool, right?" "Yeah, buddy, really cool. Think Mom will let me plant something here." Marcus smiled at the easy way Dylan called her mom now, like she'd always been part of their family. "I think she'd love that." That evening, the three of them returned to the estate, their home now in every sense. They made dinner together, Dylan telling elaborate stories about school, while Victoria and Marcus exchanged the glances of parents who knew their kid was exaggerating, but loved him anyway. After Dylan went to bed, Marcus and Victoria stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, watching autumn leaves drift past in the darkness. "We made it," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah, we did. Think we'll be okay long term." Marcus pulled her close. "I think we'll be whatever we choose to be. And I choose to be okay. With you." "Good answer." They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and built something impossibly beautiful. A marriage not based on contracts, but on choice. A family not defined by blood, but by love. A home not built from obligation, but from the daily decision to show up for each other. Inside, Dylan slept peacefully, his mended heart beating steady and strong. Around them, the garden grew wild and beautiful. And above them, stars wheeled through endless sky, bearing witness to two broken people who'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come from the contracts you never meant to keep, the strangers who become family, and the courage to speak when silence feels safer. Victoria had found her voice. Marcus had found his home. Dylan had found his future. And together, they'd found something none of them had been looking for, but all of them desperately needed: a love that didn't require perfection, only presence. A family that wasn't afraid of being broken because they knew how to heal together. Sometimes, the most broken souls really do recognize each other in ways the world never sees coming. And sometimes that recognition is enough to start building something that lasts.